All right, I'll call this meeting to order, which does require me to open the agenda. So this is our first regular council meeting as a group. First order of business, again, is to adopt the agenda. I would look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor McFadden.
Okay, I'll try this again. I am pleased to move the adoption of the agenda with an amendment that introduction of a new item 9A, that council go into a closed session as an exception to the Access to Information Act as per 20-1 of disclosure harmful for personal privacy, and then have the second closed section move down to 9B. And I'd also like to note that I'll be excusing myself from item 9B.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the agenda item or the amendment to the agenda? Seeing none, I shall call the question. All in favor of the agenda as presented? Carried unanimously. Next on the agenda would be delegations. We have none this evening, so moving straight on to business. Item 5A, municipal finance. And the meeting minutes. Sorry, I apologize. I forgot we have meeting minutes from the last council meeting, even though it was not this group. So we missed item 3. Let's just rewind. We need a motion to approve the minutes as presented. And I see Councillor McFadden eagerly has her, who has their light on first? Councillor McFadden eagerly has her light on to approve the minutes.
Yes, I will move the adoption of the minutes as per item 3A.
Any conversation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Carried. Now we can race on forwards with the agenda. Normally there may be delegations, but there's none this evening, so we'll move on to section 5, business. And we are starting with item 5A. CFO and Director Alvin Alim is going to be joining us to discuss municipal finance. Sorry, did I see a light on over there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I was just going to note that Mr. Alim was going to continue our orientation process, but I saw that it come right up on the slide there, so I think I'll just let Mr. Alim take it away.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Alim.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My presentation tonight is on municipal finance.
Excuse me, Alvin, I don't think the microphone is on. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. So I put together the agenda where I will discuss roles and key legislation, the basics of municipal finance, revenue, expense, a financial statement audit, debt, reserves, fiscal framework, and last but not least, the budget, or also known as the financial plan. So key legislation. The key legislation is the Municipal Government Act, or the MGA. Specifically, Part 8, which is the financial administration, Part 9, assessment of property, and Part 10, taxation. The key handbook is the Public Sector Accounting Standards, PSAS, or some folks refer to it as PSAB as well. And that is the rules and regulations for how we do the accounting for the books of the town. With respect to the roles, elected officials play a central role in setting the strategic and fiscal direction of the municipality, while administration manages the day-to-day financial operations. With respect to council responsibility, there are 5. Council is responsible for approving the annual and operating capital budgets, setting the property tax rate and user fees, adopting financial policies, which would be, an example would be reserve management, debt limits, investment policies on investments, monitoring financial performance through regular reports. An example would be the quarterly variance reports that council gets for the budget, and of course the audit, and ensuring long-term financial sustainability through prudent planning. Council's role is governance, not financial management. Council's focus should remain on policy, outcomes, and oversight. Basics of municipal finance. Usually when folks think about municipal finance, the first thing that comes to mind is accounting. Well, it's more than accounting, as you'll find out. So municipal finance refers to the management of finances by local governments, such as cities, towns, and counties. It includes the systems, practices, and tools that municipalities use to raise revenue, and this could be in forms of property tax, fees and charges, offset levies. A budget and allocating spending. This is allocating funds for public services, for example, like police, fire, sanitation, parks, and infrastructure. Manage debt, and monitor and report financial activity. Again, as I repeated before, through audits and financial statements and reports. With respect to municipal finance management, it is guided by several principles. Accountability. Council and staff must use public funds responsibly and be able to explain their decisions. Transparency. Ensure budgets, financial statements, and other results are open to the public. Sustainability. Financial decisions should balance current needs with long-term viability. Equity. The cost of services should be shared fairly among users and taxpayers. And finally, legality. All spending must comply with legislation, bylaws, and approved budgets. First we're going to jump into the revenue. So in municipal finance, revenue is all the income a municipality collects to fund its services and operations, basically the inflow. And there are several types of revenue sources. First one being property taxes. This is the primary source of revenue for municipalities. For the town of Cochrane, property taxes account for 41% of total revenue. Fees, examples of fees could be utilities, user fees. Grants, the government of Alberta provides various grants for both operating and capital projects. There are two. There's the Canadian Community Building Fund, the CCBF, which is the old gas tax, and the Local Government Fiscal Framework, or the LGFF. The LGFF has an operating and a capital grant, licenses and permits, and investment income. Currently, the town has $110 million in long-term investments managed by CIBC Wood Gundy. Expenses. In municipal finance, an expense is a cost incurred for goods or services necessary to provide public services. This is basically the outflow. So there are three types of expenses. There's the operating expenses. These include costs for salaries, wages and benefits, materials, supplies, utilities, contracted services. There's capital. These are investments in long-term assets like replacing aging equipment or new infrastructure. And last one is financing, and that pertains to principal and interest payments on long-term debt. We're going to jump into the annual financial statement audit. As per the MGA, an audit is required under sections 276, 277, 280, and 281. And there are a number of reasons why we require a financial statement audit. First one being accountability and transparency. An audit provides an independent opinion on financial statements, which builds public trust and demonstrates accountability to the residents, taxpayers, and other stakeholders. Credibility. A clean audit report from an independent auditor increases the credibility of financial information, assuring stakeholders that the numbers are reasonable and fairly presented. Improved governance and controls. The audit process reviews the systems of internal control and risk management, providing assurance that they are effective and that council is following relevant financial and regulatory frameworks. Better decision-making. By providing accurate financial information, audit helps council members make better informed decisions about budgeting, spending, and long-term financial planning. Compliance. Audit helps ensure council is compliant with all applicable laws, regulations, and accounting standards, such as generally accepted accounting principles and the Public Sector Accounting Board, or PSAB. And finally, identifying areas for improvement. An audit can highlight weaknesses or inefficiencies in financial management, allowing council to take action to correct issues before they become major problems and to improve service delivery. So there are 4 key statements in the audit. This first one is called the Consolidated Statement of Financial Position. In the old days, it used to be called the balance sheet. I've circled 4 areas that are important. The first one at the top, under financial assets, this shows the assets for the town. Second number is the liabilities. This shows what the town owes. The fourth one is under non-financial assets, tangible capital assets. This shows the net book value of those assets. And the last one is, at the bottom, is accumulated surplus. And this is the amount left after you add the financial assets and the non-financial assets and you subtract the liabilities. Now, additionally, accumulated surplus, it's the total of all the past and present operating surpluses and deficits, and it represents the municipality's net economic resources available for future resources. So basically it's saying, yes, it's our accumulated surplus is $616 million. That doesn't mean we have $616 million in the bank. It just represents those assets that are available to provide the services in the future. The next statement is the statement of operations, and this reflects the actual financial results at the end of the year as compared to council-approved budget. It shows the total revenue, the total expenses, as well as the annual surplus that gets added to the cumulative number at the end of the year. The third statement is the consolidated statement of change in net financial assets. And this statement explains the difference between the annual surplus and the change in the net financial assets, which I explained before. It's the assets subtract the liabilities, gives you the net. It also shows how capital assets were acquired and inventories and supplies, and also includes the figure for any capital tangible assets that were disposed in during the year. And lastly, the fourth statement is the consolidated statement of cash flows. The statement of cash flows, it identifies where the cash came from, it shows how cash was used, and it provides details and changes in cash and cash equivalents since the previous reporting period. At the bottom, I've circled the number of the cash and temporary investments of $42 million. That number ties with the first statement, which is the financial position. So the auditor's report. There are 5 areas of the auditor's report. First one being the scope of the work undertaken. In other words, this explains to council what was examined. It could not just the financial information, but the auditors will also look at internal controls, policy, and data integrity. Second is how the responsibilities of administration and the auditor differ. Administration provides the financial information, while the auditor's responsibility is to express an opinion. The third is the information regarding the audit standards that were followed in creating the report. And in this case for Canada, it's generally accepted auditing standards. Fourth, the nature and limitations of the audit. This area speaks to any issues or problems that the auditors faced during the audit. Could be insufficient information. In some cases, management wouldn't be complying with their requests. That's what the limitations would have been detailed in the report. And finally, the auditor's opinion whether the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So the objective is to receive an unqualified or clean audit opinion. So we'll jump into financial stability. So using the 2024 audited financial statements, I would like to discuss financial stability with council. Financial stability isn't just the surplus. There are a number of other financial measures that should be utilized in determining an organization's financial strength. And there's 3 foundations. One is growth. And growth could be physical, or economic. It needs to foster resilience. This is the ability of having financial framework to adapt to changing circumstances and react quickly and effectively to them. And last, long-term success. So utilizing municipal financial indicators established by Municipal Affairs, I would like to demonstrate for council that the town is financially stable. First one is the tax base. So the expected result of this benchmark is the municipality's residential and farmland tax accounts are no more than 95% of the total tax revenue. This graph shows the total taxes is 85% and the commercial is 15%. So we've met this expectation. Next one is the tax collection rate. The expected result, the municipality collects at least 90% of the municipal taxes levied in any year. So for 2024, the town collected 96.6% of the taxes. This performance measure demonstrates having procedures in place for collection and providing residents options to pay the annual tax levy. The current ratio. The expected result of this ratio is current assets to current liabilities is greater than 1. So the current ratio is a measure of the organization's ability to meet its short-term obligations or liabilities. And an example of liabilities could be debt or debt payments or interest payments, payroll, and operating expenses. To put it simply, for every dollar in liabilities, the town has $2.32 in assets to meet those obligations. Debt to revenue percentage. The expected result is the municipality's total borrowings represent less than 120% of its total revenue. For 2024, that percentage was 56.3%, which is well below the benchmark of 120%. This particular measure measures prudent use of long-term debt. Debt service to revenue percentage. The expected result, the municipality's total cost for borrowing repayments do not exceed 20% of its total revenue. For 2024, that was 4.2%. So the debt service is comprised of principal and interest payments on debt, as well as lease payments. Here as well, the town is well below the benchmark of 20%. Infrastructure age, expected result, the net book value of the municipality's tangible capital assets is greater than 40% of the original cost. In 2024, this number was 73.82%. This measure tells council the town is very proactive in replacing fully depreciated and aged assets, as well as adding to its infrastructure to provide an expected level of service. So overall, given the financial indicators described by Municipal Affairs, I can confidently conclude there are no issues or concerns from a financial stability perspective for the town of Cochrane. Debt. Legislation, debt is covered under the MG under sections 251, 252, 276, sections 1 and 2. And the purpose of debt is it is incurred when it's consistent with the strategic plan direction from council to support priority capital projects. The town does not currently have a formal debt policy. However, it will be developed as part of the fiscal framework. Debt limit. So within the debt policy, with the legislation for debt is a debt limit. And the debt limit, the purpose of debt limit is to prevent a municipality from taking on more debt than it can reasonably handle, which would lead to financial instability. To alleviate this issue, Council Resolution 60-0206 establishes 80% of the MG limit as the debt limit ceiling. Other purposes of the debt limit, by controlling debt, municipalities can avoid the high cost of interest payments that come with borrowing, ultimately saving taxpayer money and ensuring financial sustainability. It helps ensure a municipality can meet its long-term financial obligations without facing a deficit. And fourth, encourages responsible financial planning. The limit encourages municipalities to plan for future large expenditures, such as infrastructure projects, by setting aside funds in capital reserves over time. So this particular slide, what I've done is I'm showing council what the audit financial statements showed at the end of December 31st, 2024. And so there's some key information on this statement. So the debt limit per the MGA under the 2024 was 140 million, and for 2025 it's forecasted to be 142. The debt limit per the town of Cochrane bylaw, which I mentioned previously, for 2024 was 112.5 million. For 2024 is 112.5. For 2025 it'll be 114. In terms of outstanding debt in 2024, it was 48.1 million, and for 2025, there are two components. There's the new borrowing, which the previous council approved, and that was $10.8 million for the Horse Creek Sports Park. The committed borrowing pertains to two other projects that was previously approved by council, and those two projects were the River Heights Pump Station and Water Storage for $6.9 million, and the James Walker Trail of $17.9 million. Even with the additional debt in 2025, the town is still below the legislated and council-imposed debt limit. And the reason why I'd like to add is, the reason why I had committed the $24.8 million, this debt calculation is only done when the debt is actually incurred. So the only debt we actually incurred in 2025 will be the new borrowing for the Horse Creek Sports Park. But it's important that council knows the full effect of those three projects. Reserves. Financial reserves are an effective tool to support municipal asset management, planning, and operations. And there are four characteristics of a reserve. They are: if they are utilized, if there's accordingly, they'll reduce the need for debt financing. They're controlled by council through policy. There are no specific standards or regulations for reserves. In other words, there's nothing in the MGA or PSAS that talks about how reserves are created and what they're used for. It's all done through policy from council. And fourthly, reserves demonstrate prudent financial planning. So as I mentioned before, there are no specific standards or regulations for reserves. However, back in 2018, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, they did a report, which is for information only. They did a study of Alberta to see what municipalities were setting aside for reserves. This is not to provide any kind of benchmark, but just for information. And they found out that rural municipalities, their reserve balances were roughly 26.6% of their net book value. And urban municipalities, the average was 27.3% of net book value. So if you put this in context, the reserve balance for Cochrane should be roughly $148.7 million. And we are forecasting our balance to be, it's not 34.9, it's actually $39 million. I made a mistake, my apologies. I'd like to add that the reserve policy and strategy, again, will be developed as part of our fiscal framework. Reserve types, there are two types. There's the operating, and operating is used to fund operating expenditures for one-time projects, pilot programs, stabilize operating budgets for unanticipated fluctuations in revenues or expenses, complying with contractual agreements, or for operational emergencies. Some examples is the stabilization reserve, as well as our general operating reserve. For capital, reserves are used to fund approved capital programs, projects, and expenditures. And examples that we have are the municipal infrastructure reserve, as we also have a fleet and equipment reserve. This slide just shows what the forecast of our reserves are going to be at the end of 2025 and what it is anticipated for 2026 to 2028. So for 2025, the forecasted balance is $39 million. For 2026, we went up a little bit, 39.4. For 2027, 32.3. And for 2028, 40.9. The reason for the drop from 2026 to 2027 by $7 million is an increase in the draw from the Municipal Infrastructure Reserve to fund two projects that's currently in the 2026 budget, and that is the two projects are the Fifth Avenue service improvements and also the fire flow improvements. So those are two projects that resulted in the huge drawdown from that reserve. The fiscal framework. So by definition, the fiscal framework are policies that establish the organization's philosophies, principles, and processes as they apply to financial health and sustainability. And what is the purpose of a fiscal framework? Creating a strong foundation for a thriving community and context for leadership strategies on how that is planned, monitored, and evaluated. I provided a quote from the government of Alberta that states that it is an important tool in ensuring financial health and sustainability of municipal services. So in 2024, the council of the day, at the time identified 5 key areas that would form the basis of the fiscal framework. And I'll just talk briefly about each of them in the next slides. The first one is revenue, and the policies that are included in revenue would be the tax assessment. It would address utility fees, user fees and charges, alternative revenues, and investments. Investments will be coming to council in the first quarter of 2026 for discussion, for review and discussion. Asset management policies would include, of course, for asset management, it would set the stage for the capital planning, annual 5 and 10 year, as well set the policies for the offset levies. Financial sustainability. These include policies for debt, cash flow, reserves, and grants. I'd like to add that the policies for debt and reserves will be coming to council in the first quarter of 2026 for your review and discussion as well. The fourth one is business analysis, and these are policies pertaining to definition of what return on investment is, talk about key performance indicators, metrics and measurement, and efficiencies. And lastly, policies geared towards financial reporting, with financial reporting to council, the audit, discussion on more robust internal controls, budget, and public engagement. The last part of the presentation is now focused on the annual municipal budget. I just wanted to show council this slide or this table because it shows the 3 levels of government and the services that each are responsible for. It's important to note that the municipal government plays an important role in the services they provide to residents and businesses. So for the annual municipal budget, key legislation is found in sections 242, 243, 244, and 245. It states that, in a nutshell, council must adopt an operating and capital budget for each calendar year by January 1st. Additionally, there's subsection 283.1, and it addresses financial plan. The budget must include a 3-year financial plan, including the year under budget, and it also must include a capital plan for 5 years, including the year under budget. And the budget must be balanced. And what that means is revenues must equal expenses, cannot have a surplus or a deficit. So what is a municipal budget? The budget is both a financial plan and a policy statement. It defines how resources are allocated to achieve council's priorities. For the town of Cochrane, there are two components of the budget. First one being the operating. And under the operating, we have two subsections. There's the tax-supported budget, which is primarily funded through property taxes, user fees, grants, and fines. And the other one is the rate-supported, and that is our utilities. And the revenue for the rate-supported is driven by rates that are fixed and variable based on usage. And of course is the capital. And the capital projects are financed through a mix of reserves, debt, grant, and development charges or offset levies. Building on the importance of the annual budget, it is a tool for municipal planning, presenting the strategic. It presents the strategic plan and long-range plans in financial terms. Communication, it's a communication tool for the taxpayers, the provincial government, and other stakeholders. It sets the priorities and the relationship of tax dollars for service delivery. Managing and monitoring the results, and this gets back to the financial reporting where I talked the quarterly reporting of actual to budget. And last, it determines the municipal property tax rates. So the budget process, there are 4 stages. Stage 1 is the preparation and budget direction. The time frame for that is April to June. And during this stage, there are 3 things that happen. There's the staffing requests are provided to ELT for consideration. Budget principles are created to direct the budget, and budget considerations are presented to council for approval. In stage 2, development, time frame is July to August. In this stage, directors and managers compile their respective draft budget by their cost center. It involves looking at historical trend analysis and research. Stage 3 is the review. Time frame is September to October. And in this stage, directors review their respective budgets with ELT, and ELT then reviews the draft budget with finance. And finally, stage 4, time frame is November to December. In this stage, the draft budget is presented to council for review. We also have a public forum for administration to present the budget to residents. We also have the council deliberates for approximately 4 days, and those 4 days are not consecutive. And of course, in December, final approval. That concludes my presentation on municipal finance, and the recommended action is that council accept the presentation of municipal finance as information. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the presentation. Any questions from council? Kick it off with Councilor McFadden.
Yes, sir, I'll move the recommended action to approve it for information. I do have 2 questions for you. You'd highlighted the need for the fiscal framework to help outline some of our ongoing fiscal policies, and then also that we have a gap in the reserve policy, and as you identified, if we were using the metrics of other municipalities, we're about $100 million behind in what we should have in our reserve, our savings account. Is that correct?
Well, as I said, those that's just for information. If we were to adopt those, that is the balance we would get, but I don't think that is realistic, personally.
Okay, no, that's fine. So last year's budget, when we were deliberating it, the lack of a reserve policy has been a concern of mine for a number of years. And so one of the things that was talked about was the deliverable of a fiscal framework in this budget year. We don't have it at this point. What is the timeline for getting the fiscal framework adopted by council?
Typically, a fiscal framework will take, once it is approved by council, it has a time frame of 2 to 3 years. Okay. So in 2026, as I mentioned, this council will see the reserve, the debt investments, and in the 2026 budget, we will be looking at user fees, I believe it is, hang on a second. We will be looking at tax assessment, user fees and charges, and alternative revenues in 2026 as well.
Okay, so the fiscal framework includes kind of a handful of financial policies, and you're going to be delivering 3 or 4 of them in the 2026 year.
Correct, that is the plan.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I think at some point it'd be useful for council to kind of get the outline of what that commitment needs to be, and if, from my lens, certainly, anything we could do to invest in a faster adoption of the appropriate policies would be great. And then my next question, you'd identified, and I know it's accurate, that by provincial legislation, we have to adopt an operational and capital reserve by January 1st of every year. But I do understand that if council chooses not to, we could pass an interim budget for a quarter that would allow council to, if they needed to, spend more time with the budget. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Those were my questions. And great presentation as always. I learn something every time.
Thank you.
Great questions. Councillor Federico?
Thank you. Yeah, I had the question on the reserve policy as well. What is the timeline on that? I thought that actually that was supposed to be done already for this year. So I'm just curious, when will that exact policy be finished?
We are working through that policy, and as I mentioned in my presentation, we are looking at presenting the reserve policy and strategy in the first quarter of 2026.
Okay. And then my second question is, when does budget book come out, and will there be some perhaps classes to help our new council members sitting around the bench?
The Mayor, to Councilor Federico, the draft 2026 budget will be presented to council next Monday at the COW, and the budget binders will be available that day as well.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for questions.
Similar to my, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Just curious on the reporting and monitoring, and this is a brand new person question. How often will we see you back here giving us updates?
We have a quarterly report that we present to council. For example, for the period ending September 30th, that report is coming to council on November 10th.
Okay, thank you.
Back to Councillor McFadden.
Sorry, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I had too many thoughts going on. I'll have to take a pass and email it back to you.
I have a question if you want to.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Thank you for that. Man, I should have written it down. With this year's budgets, some of the concerns I had in previous year's budget, is the budget's going to be restated for the last couple of years so that the councils can see kind of apple by apple spending over last year, so that when we're looking at the upcoming budget, we can kind of see where it's at? Are they being restated or no?
The Mayor, to Councilor McFadden, the answer is yes. Any reorganizations that we have made for 2024 and 2025 have been restated, so there's a fair comparison to 2026.
Okay, is there a possibility to get restatements back to 23 or 22?
Again, the Mayor, to Councilor McFadden, I don't believe there was a lot of restatements going back to those 2 years. I think the majority of the restatements that were done the time I've been here is 2024 and 2025.
Okay, all right, thank you for that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, similar to the question that some of my colleagues raised, I wanted to just learn a bit more about that reserve situation we're facing. So the number, I think it was 27.9% is the recommended target of our net book value. Is that just an arbitrary number from some provincial administrative body, or is that the actual average that most municipalities are at?
Mayor, so as I said, it is not a recommended target, is what they found out.
Okay.
So it's not something that the town has to move towards, is that using that information, we can develop our own strategies as to what comfortable council feels those balances should be.
And so to put a fine point on it, the average municipal reserve rate in Alberta is at about 27.9% of their net book value, but Cochrane's at about 5% of our net book value. Is that roughly the math?
I believe Cochrane's between 5 to 7%.
Okay, all right. That's obviously a threat, a risk. So, and then the challenge with that, if I'm understanding correctly, would be that if some sort of capital pressure came up, we would then have to look to debt because we wouldn't have necessarily enough reserves to carry it. Correct?
That would be correct.
And if I recall correctly, so if in the absence of large reserves to deal with emerging capital items, we would have to use debt. If I remember correctly, we are on track to hit our municipal debt limit in 2027. Is that still the case in the budget coming forwards?
Yep, absolutely we are.
Okay. So, council, there's a problem. All right, over to Councillor Singh.
Thank you for the presentation. I think while the campaigning, everybody said like if it could be simplified, like, when you're presenting to the member of public, so the budget could be understandable, like a little bit more simplified, like it could be a diagram or some form of thing in there, so that common, like a layman person like myself could understand a little bit more on a depth in there. So if that could be done, something when we present to the people in like, wherever we have that format in there, that could be a little helpful.
The mayor to council saying, absolutely, the presentations to council that will be going to the public forum, it'll be very visual and easy to understand.
Just to add to that, through the chair to Councillor Singh, we're actually launching a citizens budget this year, which is going to be really, really focused on really simplifying that language around the budget. So that's our first year for that opportunity. So you'll see that as a document that we're going to share broadly across for our community to better understand our budget process and the implications and what it means to them.
Okay, Councillor Federico.
Thanks for that. With the citizens budget, the regular budget book will actually still be available as well, though?
Yes, pardon me, absolutely, yeah. It's just going to be a standalone document that's very focused on sort of that civic literacy piece, but all the other elements of our budget will still remain.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, any further questions for administration? Any final comments, Director Lim?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much for being here this evening. Looking forward to diving into all this in the months to come.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we do have a motion on the floor to accept as information. Let's call the question. All in favor to accept the information as information? Okay.
Thank you.
Carried unanimously. All right, and then next up on the normal agenda would be notices of motion, considering this is our first evening. There are no notices of motion. Mayor's report, I have nothing to report that you haven't heard already. Does anybody have any council reports? Nope. And that leads us into our closed sessions. I believe we had an item 9A as moved by Councilor McFadden at the beginning of the evening. Can I get a motion to go into our closed session? Councilor Federico?
I can make that motion to go into camera.
All right, all in favor? Okay, so Are we live? Okay, council, that is it for our closed session. Could I get a motion to come out of the closed session and resume our normal council meeting?
I move that we come out of closed session.
All right, all in favor of resuming the regular council meeting? All in favor? Carried. And then were there any motions arising from the in-camera session?
I will continue on. I move that council direct that the closed session meeting discussion remain confidential pursuant to section 21 of the Access to Information Act, and further that council direct administration to proceed with option 1 as presented in closed session.
All right. Probably no further discussion required. Anything? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And with that, that is the end of our inaugural meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.